Hello everyone, and welcome to Trending, a show about all of the diverse things that are happening in West Hollywood. I'm Tracy Savage. While Hollywood may be known as the movie capital of the world, and Broadway in New York is famous for having the highest level of commercial theater, before actors make it to either place, many of them train and perfect their craft right here in West Hollywood. Today on Trending, we are going to go inside two world-renowned acting training facilities, both located right here in our city. I'm very honored and I'm excited to have both of you joining me here today. Oscar award-winning actor Martin Landau. You're the artistic director of the Actors Studio.
West,
that's right. Got to put that in. And actress and acting teacher Monica Garcia, who is the artistic director of the Acting Artists Theater. Thank you both very much for being here
pleasure.
today.
Thank you for having us.
Really a joy to have you here. So I want to talk first about your training facilities, and then I want to talk a little more about acting and the need to train, why we have to polish our craft. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about theater in West Hollywood in general, because there's a lot going on in this city. Yeah. And I'd like to get your opinions and impressions on that. So, Mr. Landau, Martin, I'm going to start with you. The list of famous names attached to Actors Studio is a mile long. Lee Strasberg, Elia Kazan, Paul Newman, you, Martin Landau. Tell us a little bit, please, the history of the Actors Studio. I do know it began 68 years ago, but tell us how it got started.
Well, the West Coast branch of the Actors Studio didn't start until 1967, as opposed to 1947. Lee Strasberg said we'll never work on the West Coast, and we didn't listen to Big Daddy. We went ahead and started the studio, because there were a lot of people bi-coastal at that point. The Actors Studio is not a school. In fact, we're having final auditions next Sunday. We have them twice a year. And when you become a member of the studio, you're a life member. So we're very, very, very particular. And it's not easy to get into the studio. There are years we haven't accepted anyone. I'll talk about the year I got in. Over 2,000, this was in New York, over 2,000 auditioned that year, and 2 were accepted. Steve McQueen and I were the 2 actors who were accepted, which was a blessing, which is one of the reasons why I still do this. But it's not a school. It's sort of an elitist club with very talented people.
And how has it stayed operating and in business all these years?
We came to West Hollywood before there was a West Hollywood. There was William S. Hart left his first home in Hollywood to the city of Los Angeles. We were a property of the city in the middle of Los Angeles County, which was what West Hollywood was called then, before it had a franchise. So we negotiated with the city to start with, Sidney Pollack, Mark Rydell, and myself. And we became part of West Hollywood when West Hollywood took over the county as such. So we have a long history here. New York is still very thriving in the sense that Al Pacino, Harvey Keitel, and Ellen Burstyn run the New York studio. Mark Rydell and I run the West Coast studio. And we're very healthy. We do projects. We have training all week long. When I say all week long, we have call reading sessions. We have sense memory. It's really a place for professional actors to fall on their faces, be willing to, and grow.
So you say it's not a school. What's the difference between a training facility and a school?
Well, this is a place where actors want to get better, no matter how much they have been functioning as actors. I mean, Pacino, Bobby De Niro, Duvall, Shelley Winters was very active on the West Coast before she passed away. Gene Hackman, people like that.
The history, the names are amazing.
Well, I mean, I'm not dropping names, but they're members of the studio.
Yeah.
And the only denominator is talent. That's what we care about, and uniqueness. We have a lot of We just did a Gerges play, I won't mention the name because it's foul, in which we used a lot of our newer members, Hispanic members, literally people who grew up in New York, in the streets, in the hood. And the play was brilliantly done and directed by somebody from the neighborhood, so to speak. And the point is, we're doing a project next in February that was developed at a playwriting directing unit by a girl called Gina Acosta, this is her first full-length play. She has written one-act plays prior to this, and it's being directed. And when we do a project, we don't have critics, we don't charge, and we don't advertise.
Wow.
Hopefully, a theater owner in town will see the show and bring it to his theater. And all we ask is that they say developed at the Actors Studio.
I love it.
It's basically for the neighborhood.
I love it.
And it's, you know, we're not a commercial venture. We're not a theater, really. We're
a gym almost to go in and work out.
It's really like a gymnasium for actors.
Well, you mentioned the neighborhood. Let's talk about the neighborhood. You also mentioned the William Hart House, historic property in the city of West Hollywood. How did you acquire or move into this house?
Well, in his will, you know, he had a big estate out, a ranch out in the valley. He said he wanted this house to become a part of the theater in Los Angeles. He started on Broadway. He became a first Western movie star in silent pictures. So he had an eye towards the theater. And he said, whatever happens, the city should own the property and lease it to an organization. Well, we applied. Sid Pollock, as I say, who was not known at the time, Sydney, Mark Rydell, who was not a director yet either, and I was fairly new to California as well. But we had a lot of New York actors here, and we said, you know, we were starving. So we applied, and they gave it to us. And we have served the community. I used to go to, myself, to Roy Campanella High School in that part of town, and work with the kids. You know, who've never been on an airplane, doing improvisations and stuff, and introducing them to theater.
I love it.
Which is healthy. As you say, you know, West Hollywood has a huge amount of off-Broadway theaters, and they need to be nurtured and taken care of.
It must feel so wonderful for you to be able to give back like this.
Well, it is, you know, and I'm still working as an actor. I just finished a picture with Christopher Plummer and Adam McGoyan, who's probably Canada's best young director, nominated twice for Oscars, directed it, and I'm going to start a movie with John Avildsen, who directed the first Rocky and won the Oscar shortly. So for an old guy, I'm still doing a lot of stuff.
That's fantastic.
And you know, I want new kids to take over the studio. I don't want it to become a museum, and so when we like someone and not enough to make them members, we make them finalists and bring them in for 6 months so they can pay attention to what goes on there. We spent a lot of time, you know.
Grooming them.
Well, grooming them, the things nobody teaches anymore are things that we care about. I mean, I've never met two people who are alike. People come from different places, they have different sounds. You know, Danny Aiello will call me time and time again with the same phone call. Marty, Gary Sinise is a good actor, but he's not a New York cop. He's a Chicago cop. He sounds like a Chicago cop. He's not a New York cop. And it's true. Where you come from is important. What schools you went to, what your religion was, all kinds of things. What kind of a day is it? What time of year is it? We have sense memory sessions. We have cold reading sessions. We have effective memory sessions. We have how to rehearse sessions. And we're talking about professional actors who make their living acting, wanting to be better still.
Love it.
And that's what the Actor Studio is about.
And how many new members do you take every year?
You're a life member, so it's not a question. We don't have a quota. Sometimes we don't take anyone.
Okay.
Sometimes we'll take 3 or 4 people all year.
Right.
Sometimes less, sometimes more.
Wow.
It depends. Last June, I'm trying to remember, we took 9 people, which was unheard of. We have never done that. And we don't know where they came from.
Yeah.
We were blown away by 9 actors we'd never seen before.
That's fantastic.
When we're not sure, we, as I say, we call them in as finalists,
Right.
have them sit, watch, go to the different sessions, work out, and audition again. But we took 9 people, and it was like, how is that? How did that happen? And they're all working at the studio and developing and doing stuff and innovating.
It's exciting.
And we're very happy with what we've done.
Well, Monica Garcia, your turn.
Yeah.
You are the artistic director of the Acting Artists Theater.
Yes.
It's right here in West Hollywood, and you founded it just 2 years ago, although you've been involved for a dozen years.
Correct.
Tell us first a little bit about this theater and why you decided to start it 2 years ago.
Well, I became interested in acting in college, and I found a friend of mine said, I have this teacher, you should come check him out. It was called Actor Circle Theater before it was Acting Artists Theater. In 1997, I came to audit the class, and I knew that was the place for me. My teacher was Arthur Mendoza. He is the protege of Stella Adler, who early on the American theater, the group theater, were all of these great people that Mr. Landau has worked with. They were all in a group together. And everybody started to split up, and Stella went back to Stanislavski and really solidified her technique, her take on his work. Early on, he did use sense memory, and then he said the same mind can't live in 2 places at once. It can't live in the past and be in the present. So she ran with the technique that she developed, completely out of the imagination. And my teacher taught me everything he knows. He asked me to teach in 2002, and I said, no, thank you, I'm not interested. And I realized it was completely fear-based of why I didn't want to. I wanted to just be an actor. And I was afraid that I would be a teacher only in my limited understanding. I minimized it so much out of fear. And once I began to teach, I said, well, I'll try, and if I don't like it, I don't have to continue.
Sure.
But I have to at least try because I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So I started teaching, and I fell in love. And not only did I fall in love with teaching, I started working more as an actress because I really understood. I don't believe you can understand something unless you can explain it.
Yeah.
And I realized I couldn't explain what I was doing. And once I could start teaching my students and explaining what this technique is out of the imagination, the approach of the work, and autobiography, and beats and actions, and really tearing apart the craft of acting, I was more and more successful as an actress as well. So.
That's so wonderful. The technique, this is what
Yes.
you're talking about.
Yes.
Stella Adler.
Correct.
You've kind of hinted about it. Can you give us in a nutshell what it means? Because everybody has heard of that, but what does that mean?
Sure. Well, we don't use our personal experiences, and there's that big controversy. Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler would always butt heads about the method.
I knew Stella, and one of our best students
Right.
was her favorite student, Joanne Linville, who was married to
Mark Rydell.
Mark Rydell.
Correct.
I mean, Stella was a force. Marlon Brando would talk about Stella. Carl Malden would talk about Stella. I'm not just one kind of thing. I mean, Stella, Sandy,
Right.
all of these people, Bobby Lewis, I mean, they all had things to offer, and I am open to all of that.
Absolutely.
So-
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Like, there isn't one way to do this.
Yeah.
There is not one way. There are many ways obviously people have won Oscars and been very successful with their understanding of the craft.
Right.
And when I discovered this technique, I fell in love with it, and I had tried other methods, and that's what really struck a chord with me.
So technique is imagination.
Completely imagination, imaginary base. And there's an approach. It's sort of like Karate Kid. You're doing exercises, and it all comes together at once. And before you know it, you have all of these tools. And
So how does an actor join your theater? How do they become a student, and how does it work at your
well, I
theater?
believe my theater is not for everyone. I suggest they come in and have a free audit and see if this is a place for them. We live in a town where people don't train very often, and they go to workshops and they piece themselves together in a way. They don't have a strong foundation of the craft. I mean, who doesn't love the Actors Studio? It's very craft based. It's something that a strong foundation and an approach to the work. So you come in and audit, and if you think it's a place for you, if you really want to work hard and have some discipline in this craft, then it's a great place to study.
Now, you've said that teaching has helped you to be a better actress.
Correct.
The fact that you were a working, successful actress, has that helped you to be a better teacher because you know and understand?
Absolutely.
And been there.
Absolutely. I can piece together what I know now about the technique and apply it to the real working world of why do we do this, and seeing something that isn't there, working on the imagination and projecting an image. Because when you're on set and you shoot something, sometimes the other actor isn't there, or they put a piece of tape for an eye line, and you have to pretend, act like you're seeing or having an emotional connection.
Yeah.
And so
With a piece of tape.
With a piece of tape, absolutely.
So how do you end up in West Hollywood?
Well, that's where I found my teacher, Acting Artists Theater.
Okay.
Once Actor Circle Theater closed, I was already there. I had been teaching there for quite some time, 12 years.
Okay.
So I just took
You
over
just
the
took over
building
from
and
them.
started a new business. It's the same school. I haven't changed anything. That Stella's work with, I have her book, that her technique and her approach. That's all I teach. I haven't changed it.
That's amazing. The history, I love it. It's so interesting to hear you both talk about this. So let me ask you both a very simple, very basic question. Why do actors need to train and need to polish their craft? Shouldn't it just come naturally?
No,
No,
it doesn't.
it doesn't.
No, talent is talent. There's no question about it. Imagination, I mean, is very important. I mean, yes, the studio was Strasberg's studio, and people think about the studio as a living kind of place to honor Lee Strasberg. Well, excepting there were a lot of other group theater people who, Kazan, for instance, who was not a big Strasberg lover, even though he asked, after Bobby Lewis left the studio in its early days, he invited Strasberg because Strasberg was a perfect teacher for the Actors Studio.
Actors who are already successful and working still need to train, right? You can't just not
Still need to grow.
grow.
Let me put it that way.
Okay.
Not to train, but
Okay.
if you take inventory, you begin to realize that you have problems in certain areas. Those are the things, if you're a concert pianist and you're getting to a place and you say, whoops, here's that part that I hate because I'm not sure of it. That's the thing to practice. That's the thing to do again and again and again, so it becomes part of your instrument. And actors need to be honest with themselves that we all have strengths. If I can wake you up at 4 a.m. and you can do that, you don't have to work on that.
Yeah.
I also think it's very dangerous for actors to depend on their talent alone. You're always at the mercy of the director you're working with. You're going to depend on people to make you better and great. I mean, yeah, but they can if you are really trained, but you're at the mercy of it. And when you don't have control of your own talent, it's hit or miss. I think a lot of this is confidence. If you don't have confidence, if you're not trained, we have a lot of other actors that come from other countries that are really trained, that take the craft seriously, and sometimes we depend on our good looks and our talents alone.
Yeah.
And it's a very slippery slope.
And can you see these actors evolve when you start out with them?
Absolutely.
Is it amazing?
It is. It's such a gift to see people
great.
just grow and come into their own, and the confidence and
Trust.
just their passion for the work, and absolutely trust in themselves and each other.
That's everything. To trust something, to be willing to take an alternate road. I mean, you can see the country. If you're staying on Route 66, you're not going to see America. You've got to see the Grand Canyon, you've got to get off the main road. To see Indian reservations, you have to get off the main road. That's what she's talking about. That's what I'm talking about, is areas that you still don't use. That because you're secure with certain things, you go to those things. To trust yourself and try something new, completely new,
It's risky.
is risky. That's what we do at the studio.
And you have had a busy career,
Well, I've done
Orlando.
150 movies
So-
and 400 television
Holy.
shows. So hey,
But so why did you decide to train, to help and be involved and teach and train?
because I realize I have not been directed by anybody in 30 years. Why? Because I come in with stuff, and I figure if they don't like it, they'll tell me. They don't say anything. So what she's talking about is my mantra. I mean, what I'm basically saying is Woody Allen historically doesn't direct. You know, if he doesn't like what you do, he fires you. but he doesn't, he won't dare.
Either you got it or you don't.
You come in with things, you make choices, you're willing to trust your instrument. A good director will say that's one less thing to worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah, my goal every time I work is to not have the director talk to me. If he or she has to talk to me, that means I'm not doing my job.
That's it.
Brilliant.
And I don't look for a praise. I teach my students, if I get a compliment, that's bonus. But I don't need it or look for it. I
You're
want
supposed to do it.
them
You're
to go
supposed to
in
know
there.
the job.
Yeah.
Well, I've worked with Tim Burton. I work with Hitchcock. I work with Francis Coppola. What I'm basically saying, all of these people are different, and they leave me alone.
That's so wonderful.
I mean, they welcome me.
Yeah.
If you want a certain kind of a gangster, hire Joe Pesci.
Yeah.
But if you hire me, you don't know what you're going to get.
Well, you mentioned that you provide your theater productions to the public for free.
Yes.
And how do people find out about it? And how do, just from word of mouth, basically?
Word of mouth.
And and Monica, at your theater, do you do performances also that the people in West Hollywood and surrounding communities can come and watch?
I do showcases for my students, but I also rent out the theater for productions. I have an original production in there now, opening this weekend. I rent it out Thursday through Sunday to have more theater in West Hollywood.
Yeah. So, what do you think of the theater scene here in West Hollywood? You mentioned earlier, it's huge, right? I mean, there's so much going on.
It's terrific.
West Hollywood is an amazing place to see a lot of, what would we call it, off Broadway, or what?
A lot of original work as well.
Yeah.
A lot of young writers and
lot of
original work.
Wonderful stuff. Santa Monica Boulevard is loaded with little theaters that present all kinds of wonderful things that you can't see anywhere else.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful.
We're really lucky.
We're
Very
very lucky. And the interesting thing is, our board of directors consists of West Coast people, East Coast people. We see each other, we talk to each other. One of our chief financial person was an apprentice bookkeeper who worked for the Schubert organization. As the years have gone on, those older fellows have passed away. He is now president of the Schubert organization and runs 17 theaters.
Wow.
We have our board of directors meetings at his office these days
Very nice.
because he's so busy.
Yeah, that's so neat.
17 Broadway theaters. Think about that.
Wow, incredible. Monica, you mentioned that you see artists, actors from other countries that are very trained and take their craft very seriously. Our producer here at Trending had a really good question. We're seeing a lot of award-nominated actors that are coming from Australia, coming from England. What does that say about actors in America? Relying too much on their good looks?
Well, early on it was East Coast versus West Coast. And if you saw the documentary Casting By, you really got a good sense of the trained actors in the East Coast, and what we had here were the good-looking people. And so there was always the East versus West. Now it's like America and other countries. And I just think the bottom line is we just really need to get our young actors to take the craft seriously, to train and to study, and not just piece themselves together or workshop. Nobody wants to put in the work or take the time to really study. And I think if we get our young actors back on track to take this craft seriously and to really hone their craft and train and put in the time, you won't have to just rely on those good looks that are fading. And have some depth and some quality to their
The
instrument.
British take care of their people. In other words, for instance, take Chorus Line. When I was living in England, they brought the American company over, but they could only play it for a month before the British company took over. They protect their actors. We don't protect our actors in the same way, sadly. There's something about an accent that people find glamorous and wonderful, and I'm not thrilled with the fact that there are so many Australians playing Americans, so many English playing Americans, so many New Zealanders playing Americans. Our casting directors tend to like those people. We have some very talented people in this country who take their work seriously, and we have to pay attention to them. So I think some of it has to do with the system. And the leniency. We have a lot of very talented people here. But we also have, as she said, people who are beginning to study seriously, who wouldn't have gone to her, for instance, 5 years ago.
Very good. Wow. Well, Martin, Monica, one final question. What little piece of advice would you give to young actors just starting out? I think I know the answer, but I'll let you tell me. Monica, what would you tell to young actors who really want to make it? What do they need to do? What's your advice?
Well, be clear on what kind of actor you want to be. And if you want to have a career and take it very seriously, find the school that is right for you, find the training that is best for you, and study. Study, take a class, train. That's the most. Fall in love with the work. If you're not in love with the work, it's going to be very hard, because you're going to focus on the money or wanting to be famous, and it's very painful if you focus on those things. You really have to love it.
And Martin?
I agree with everything she's saying, but I'm going to quote Betty Davis.
I love it.
on the Dick Cavett show. She guested on it, and the last question he asked her was, what advice would you give a young actress coming to West Hollywood for the first time? And she said, take Fountain.
Very good. Nice way to finish this up. Thank you both. Martin Landau, Monica Garcia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you,
It really
Tracy.
was a pleasure. I could probably talk for several more hours. I've really, really enjoyed it. I appreciate you giving me your time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, if you have a comment or would like more information, or if you have an idea for a trending topic, just leave a message at WehoTV on Facebook or Twitter. You can also email us. Just remember to put #trending in the subject line, and we'll get right back to you. I'm Tracy Savage. Break a leg.